Welcome to British Focus, your go-to channel for the latest insights and updates on the stories shaping the UK. Today, we dive into one of the most pressing issues currently gripping the nation, the Southport attack. Rachel Reeves, a prominent Labour politician, recently appeared on Sky News and addressed this tragic incident, which has left the British public with more questions than answers. With Axel Rudak Cabana now sentenced, the lingering uncertainty surrounding the case continues to dominate headlines. This moment marks a significant shift, as it's one of the first times a Labour figure has spoken openly about the attack, providing crucial perspectives on the matter. In today's video, we'll break down Rachel Reeves' statements, analyze the broader implications, and explore what this means for the nation moving forward. But that's not all. We'll also bring you a comprehensive look at the latest news from across the UK, offering you the context and clarity you need in these fast-moving times. So, before we dive in, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to British Focus. Join our rapidly growing community and stay informed about the stories that matter most. Let's get started.
I mean, it's appalling what happened in Southport and the evil, cowardly acts of that man. The impact will be felt forever by those families, and it's right that there's now a public inquiry to establish what on earth went wrong. The man was referred 3 times to prevent. He'd been found carrying a knife on multiple occasions, and he'd attacked a boy he was at school with, and yet he was able to slip through the system. And so it is absolutely essential that we learn lessons, not just to provide some sort of understanding for the families of who've lost their loved ones, but also to stop anything like this ever happening again. And no stone should be left unturned in that inquiry. So I think it's really important that when a government speaks, when ministers speak about something before there's been a trial, that people are very careful about the words that they use, because if a government of any colour did anything to prejudice a trial, then that minister would never be forgiven. And so ministers do have to use words with caution. I think part of what this public inquiry needs to establish is when Prevent look at things, what they regard as terror, because my understanding of this case is because they didn't think that the killer had an ideology, that therefore he wasn't at risk in the same way that somebody who might have an ideological motive might. But just because you don't have an ideological motive doesn't mean that you can't be a mass killer and incredibly dangerous.
Rachel Reeves' comments on the Southport attack have sparked significant debate, and for good reason. When a tragedy of this magnitude occurs, it's natural for the public to demand accountability and answers, yet it's painfully clear that the existing systems failed to prevent this devastating event. Reeves rightly pointed out that the anti-terror Prevent program requires a serious re-evaluation, particularly in how it assesses threats. The Southport killer had no discernible ideology, which evidently made it more difficult to identify him as a potential danger. But this raises an unsettling question. Why should ideology be the only factor in recognizing a threat? This tragic incident, as Reeves described, is appalling. The impact on the victims' families is immeasurable and will reverberate for generations. Yet, beyond the emotional toll lies a systemic issue that cannot be ignored. The killer had been referred to Prevent not once, but 3 times. He was found carrying knives on multiple occasions, and he even attacked a schoolmate. These red flags should have prompted intervention, yet somehow he slipped through the cracks. This is precisely why a thorough public inquiry is not only justified but absolutely necessary. We cannot allow this to become just another tragedy swept under the rug. If we don't learn from these failings, how can we ensure the safety of our communities in the future? Now, let's take a moment to address the Prevent program itself. Designed to stop people from being drawn into terrorism, Prevent plays a critical role in national security. However, the Southport case exposes glaring deficiencies in how the program identifies and assesses risks. Reeves' call for a re-evaluation of what is considered terrorism is an important step forward. The program appears to have focused too narrowly on ideological motives, neglecting to address the fact that individuals can commit heinous acts without adhering to a specific belief system. This oversight is not only dangerous but deeply irresponsible. A killer doesn't need a manifesto to be a threat. Violence, in whatever form it takes, should never be underestimated. Reeves also made a crucial point about government ministers and their responsibilities when speaking on incidents like these. Words matter, and when spoken carelessly, they can prejudice trials and undermine justice. Ministers, regardless of their political affiliations, must exercise caution and avoid making statements that could compromise ongoing investigations or court proceedings. However, this raises another issue: the public's frustration with the lack of transparency and accountability. People want answers, and they want them now. Striking a balance between ensuring justice and addressing public concerns is no easy task, but it's a challenge that must be met with integrity. Public reactions to Reeves' comments have been polarizing, highlighting the deep divide in opinions on this issue. Some have accused her of being disingenuous, questioning Labour's track record on issues related to public safety and deportation. Critics were quick to point out that Labour has historically opposed deporting individuals linked to criminal activities, including cases similar to the Southport attack. This criticism taps into a broader concern about how political ideologies influence policies on national security. Is it fair to link Reeves' statements to her party's history? Perhaps, but we must also recognize that addressing systemic failings should transcend political lines. It's also worth noting that some of Reeves' detractors brought up the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, definition of terrorism, which is far more expansive than what many might assume. Under British law, acts such as planning, assisting, or even collecting information on how to commit terrorist acts are punishable offences. If that's the case, why wasn't the Southport killer flagged earlier? Was it a failure of communication between agencies, a misinterpretation of the law, or something more deeply ingrained in the system? These are the questions that demand answers, and the public inquiry must leave no stone unturned in uncovering the truth. Let's not forget the human cost of this tragedy. The families of the victims are left to grapple with unimaginable grief, knowing that their loved ones were taken in an act of senseless violence that might have been prevented. For them, this isn't just a policy debate or a political talking point, it's a matter of justice and closure. It's essential that the inquiry not only identifies what went wrong but also ensures that these families receive the support and answers they deserve. If we fail to address their pain, what kind of message does that send about the value of human life? The PREVENT program, as it stands, seems ill-equipped to deal with the evolving nature of threats. In a world where violence is increasingly random and unpredictable, focusing solely on ideological motives is a recipe for disaster. We need a more nuanced approach, one that considers behavioral patterns, previous criminal activity, and other warning signs that may indicate a propensity for violence. This isn't about creating a surveillance state or infringing on individual freedoms. It's about using the tools we already have more effectively. What's even more concerning is the broader implication of these systemic failures. If PREVENT and similar programs can't identify threats like the Southport killer, what other dangers are slipping through the cracks? This is a wake-up call, not just for the government but for society as a whole. We must demand better from those tasked with protecting us, and we must hold them accountable when they fall short. As we reflect on this issue, it's clear that there's no simple solution. Addressing the flaws in the PREVENT program will require time, resources, and, most importantly, political will. It's easy to point fingers and assign blame, but real change demands collaboration and a commitment to doing what's right, even when it's difficult. So, what can we, as citizens, do? First, we must stay informed and engaged. Understanding the complexities of issues like these is the first step towards meaningful change. Second, we must hold our leaders accountable, ensuring that they prioritize public safety over political expediency. And finally, we must foster a culture of vigilance and compassion, recognizing that the safety of our communities depends on all of us working together. This tragedy has shaken the nation, but it also serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, accountability, and the need for systemic change. The public inquiry into the Southport attack is a critical step forward, but it's only the beginning. Let's hope that the lessons learned from this tragedy lead to a safer, more secure future for us all. What are your thoughts on this issue? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters. Together, we can drive the conversation forward and demand the change we so desperately need. The Chagos Islands deal has sparked a whirlwind of controversy, raising significant questions about trust, national security, and international diplomacy. At the heart of this debate lies the proposed agreement between Keir Starmer and Mauritius, a deal that would transfer control of the Chagos Islands, including Diego Garcia, a vital US military base, to Mauritius. While the UK would lease the islands back for a century at an enormous cost of £9 billion, critics argue that the risks far outweigh the potential benefits. And honestly, can we afford to ignore these warnings? Let's unpack what this all means and why it matters. First, let's address the elephant in the room, the security implications. The Chagos Islands are not just a cluster of remote territories, they are strategically vital, particularly Diego Garcia, which serves as a cornerstone for US military operations in the Indian Ocean. Handing control of such a critical asset to Mauritius, a nation with growing ties to China and Iran, has understandably set alarm bells ringing. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana did not mince his words, warning that this move could endanger both UK and US security. And let's be real, how can we expect Mauritius, a nation allegedly deepening its relationships with two of the West's biggest geopolitical adversaries, to safeguard our interests? Kennedy's criticism of Starmer was particularly scathing. He accused him of undermining the trust between allies, calling for Trump to veto the deal outright. And you know what? He's not alone. Jim Risch, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, echoed similar concerns. Risch emphasized that Trump would prioritize national security over any potential embarrassment for the UK government, a pointed jab at those pushing this deal forward. If sources close to Trump are correct, we could see this deal blocked as early as next week. But the real question is, why are we even in this position in the first place? What makes this situation even more troubling is the broader context. We're not just talking about a simple land transfer. This deal would provide China and Iran with yet another avenue to expand their influence. Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6, has already raised alarms about how Iran could use academic exchanges with Mauritius as a cover for espionage. And let's not forget MI5's warnings last year about foreign nations exploiting British universities for spying operations. If these activities are already happening, what's stopping them from using the Chagos Islands as a new front for intelligence gathering? The strategic importance of the Indian Ocean cannot be overstated. It's a region fraught with tension, from China's aggressive territorial ambitions to Iran's destabilizing activities. By handing control of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, we risk creating a backdoor for adversaries to undermine Western interests. The idea that this deal could jeopardize one of the most critical military bases in the region is not just alarming, it's downright reckless. But let's take a step back and consider the broader implications. This deal is being framed as a way to adhere to international law and resolve long-standing disputes with Mauritius. Fair enough, historical grievances should be addressed. However, should this come at the expense of national and global security? Labour's argument that surrendering the islands will guarantee the security of Diego Garcia feels, at best, overly optimistic and, at worst, dangerously naive. International law is important, yes, but so is protecting the people and alliances that depend on these territories for safety and stability. The political optics of this deal are also worth examining. Starmer's push for this agreement has drawn sharp criticism from across the political spectrum, with some accusing him of prioritizing virtue signaling over practical governance. The perception that Labour is rushing this deal while Biden remains in office, possibly to avoid a more hawkish approach under Trump, only adds fuel to the fire. It raises questions about whether this move is being made in the UK's best interest or simply to appease certain international pressures. And let's not overlook the financial aspect. Leasing the islands back for £9 billion is no small sum, especially at a time when the UK faces significant economic challenges. Critics argue that this money could be better spent addressing pressing domestic issues rather than financing a deal fraught with geopolitical risks. Is this really the best use of our resources? What's even more baffling is the timing of this agreement. With the world facing mounting tensions and an increasingly volatile geopolitical landscape, now is hardly the moment to make concessions that could weaken our strategic position. The Chagos Islands have been a linchpin for Western security in the region for decades. Surrendering them now sends the wrong message, not just to our adversaries but to our allies as well. This situation also highlights a deeper issue, the need for transparency and public accountability in decisions of this magnitude. The lack of clear communication from those pushing this deal forward has left many feeling uneasy. Why are we not seeing a more robust debate on the potential consequences? Where is the assurance that our security interests will be safeguarded? The British public deserves answers, not backroom deals that could have far-reaching implications. So, where does this leave us? For one, it's clear that this deal is far from straightforward. The risks, both strategic and financial, are significant, and the potential benefits remain questionable. Trump's expected veto may offer a temporary reprieve, but the fact that we've reached this point should serve as a wake-up call. We must approach such decisions with caution, ensuring that they are guided by long-term interests rather than short-term gains. At the end of the day, this isn't just about the Chagos Islands or even Diego Garcia. It's about what kind of nation we want to be. One that prioritizes security, trust, and strategic foresight, or one that makes hasty concessions under the guise of international law. The choice we make will have lasting consequences, not just for the UK but for the broader global order. What are your thoughts on this contentious issue? Do you think the risks of the Chagos Islands deal outweigh the benefits? Or do you believe this is a necessary step to resolve historical disputes? Let us know in the comments below. We want to hear your perspective. And if you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to British Focus for more in-depth analyses on the issues that matter most. Together, we can foster a better understanding of the challenges facing our nation and work toward solutions that prioritize the greater good. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care.